The client trust account reconciliation report showed a discrepancy of exactly $847,293.15, and I had never seen that transaction code before. I am Benedict Aldrich, 42 years old, a bankruptcy partner at our data privacy firm here in San Antonio. 20 years of practice had taught me that numbers don't lie, but people do. The monthly reconciliation had arrived in my inbox at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 days earlier than usual. Our accounting department never sent reports early. I pulled up the case management system on my dual monitors. The transaction originated from the Meridian Industries bankruptcy case, my largest active file. The timestamp showed 11:43 p.m. on Sunday, March 15th. I had been at my daughter's soccer tournament that entire weekend. The digital signature matched my partner access code, but the IP address traced to our downtown office. My coffee grew cold as I scrolled through the detailed breakdown. 17 separate wire transfers, each under the federal reporting threshold. The receiving accounts belonged to shell companies I had never heard of: Coastal Holdings LLC, Summit Advisory Group, Pinnacle Financial Services. Professional names that meant nothing. I called our IT director, Maximilian Westbrook. His voicemail picked up immediately. The main reception desk transferred me to 3 different extensions before someone finally answered. Our lateral recruiting director, Isadora Blackwood, sounded surprised to hear from me. "Benedict, you're calling early today. Everything all right with the Meridian case?" Her question struck me as odd. Why would she assume I was calling about Meridian? I had never discussed that case with recruiting. Isadora handled partner acquisitions and lateral hires, not active bankruptcy proceedings. Her knowledge of my caseload seemed unusually specific. "Just reviewing some account reconciliations," I said carefully. "Have you seen Maximilian this morning?" "He called in sick yesterday. Food poisoning, I think. Should be back tomorrow." I thanked her and hung up. The timing felt convenient. Too convenient. I printed the reconciliation report and locked it in my desk drawer. The firm's case management system required 2-factor authentication for all trust account access. My phone showed no recent verification requests. Someone had bypassed the security protocols entirely. The Meridian Industries case represented 18 months of complex Chapter 11 proceedings. My client had trusted our firm with their entire financial restructuring. The missing funds would destroy their reorganization plan and potentially trigger criminal investigations. I needed answers before anyone else discovered the discrepancy. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my phone to call the managing partner. The number rang twice before I disconnected. If someone inside the firm had orchestrated this theft, reporting it immediately might give them time to cover their tracks. I needed evidence first. The office felt different that morning. Conversation stopped when I walked past. Colleagues avoided eye contact in the hallways. Either paranoia was setting in, or everyone already knew something I didn't. I had built my reputation on meticulous attention to detail and unwavering client loyalty. Now someone was using my access codes to steal from the very clients I had sworn to protect. The betrayal cut deeper than the potential criminal liability. My computer chimed with a new email notification. The sender's address showed as system.administrator@firm-internal.com, an address I had never seen before. The subject line read, "Urgent, account access review required." I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the mouse. Opening that email might trigger additional security protocols or alert whoever was monitoring my activities. But ignoring it might raise even more suspicions. The message contained a single line of text. "Your recent account activity requires immediate verification. Please report to Conference Room C at 2 p.m. today." Conference Room C was located on the executive floor, 2 levels above my office. I had only been there twice in my entire tenure, once for my partnership interview and once for a major client presentation. The managing partners reserved that space for the most serious firm business. Someone wanted to discuss my recent account activity in the most formal setting possible. The meeting request had arrived 6 months after I thought I understood how our firm operated. Benedict Aldrich, 42, bankruptcy partner specializing in data privacy compliance for Chapter 11 cases. I had joined the San Antonio office 3 years earlier, recruited specifically for my expertise in protecting sensitive client information during financial restructuring. The lateral recruiting director, Maximilian Oakmont, had made the transition seamless. He handled my credential verification, client transfer protocols, and integration into the partnership track. Maximilian understood the complexities of moving between firms while maintaining attorney-client privilege. His attention to detail matched my own obsessive standards. During my first major case, I had made a critical error in a bankruptcy filing, missing a crucial deadline that could have cost our client millions. The mistake would have triggered mandatory reporting to the state bar and potentially destroyed my career. Maximilian discovered the error during his routine case review process. "Benedict, we need to discuss the Henderson filing," he had said, closing my office door behind him. "There's a timing issue that needs immediate correction." He had worked through the weekend to file emergency motions and coordinate with opposing counsel. The corrected documents were submitted Monday morning with explanations that satisfied the court. They kept my mistake out of the press after a bad filing. My client never learned how close their case had come to disaster. That favor created an unspoken bond between us. Maximilian had saved my reputation and my client's financial future. I owed him everything. The trust account access codes were part of our standard partnership responsibilities. Each bankruptcy partner maintained separate client escrow accounts for retainer funds and settlement distributions. The firm's case management system required dual authentication, my password, plus a secondary verification code that changed every 30 minutes. Maximilian had requested temporary access to my codes 6 weeks earlier. A major client needed emergency fund transfers during a weekend court hearing. The managing partners were unavailable, and I was attending my daughter's graduation ceremony in Austin. He assured me the access would be revoked immediately after the transaction. "Just this once, Benedict. The client's entire reorganization depends on those funds being available Monday morning." I had provided the codes via encrypted message. The transaction appeared legitimate in Monday's case management reports. Maximilian confirmed the access had been disabled and thanked me for the flexibility. Now, staring at the mysterious email about account activity review, I realized that weekend might have been the beginning of something much larger. I spent the morning reviewing every transaction in my client trust accounts. The case management system showed normal activity, retainer deposits, court filing fees, expert witness payments. But the bank statements told a different story. Small discrepancies appeared in dozens of transactions over the past month. $500 here, $800 there. Amounts small enough to avoid triggering automatic fraud alerts. The pattern became clear when I cross-referenced the timestamps. Every suspicious transaction occurred during periods when I was out of the office. Court hearings, client meetings, depositions. Someone with access to my codes was systematically skimming funds during my documented absences. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Conference room C, come alone, bring nothing." The executive floor felt like foreign territory. Thick carpeting muffled my footsteps as I walked toward conference room C. The mahogany doors were closed, but I could hear voices inside. At least 3 people, possibly more. I knocked twice and waited. "Enter," came a voice I recognized as the managing partner. The room contained 4 people seated around a polished conference table. Managing partner Isadora Blackwood sat at the head, flanked by 2 attorneys I didn't recognize. Maximilian occupied the chair directly across from the empty seat clearly intended for me. "Benedict, thank you for coming," Isadora said. "Please sit." The unknown attorneys introduced themselves as representatives from the firm's professional liability insurance carrier. Their presence meant someone had already filed a formal complaint or discovered evidence of malpractice. "We're here to discuss irregularities in your client trust account management," one of the insurance attorneys said. Specifically, unauthorized fund transfers totaling $47,000 over the past 6 weeks. The number hit me like a physical blow. $47,000, far more than the small discrepancies I had identified that morning. "I've been conducting my own investigation," I said carefully. "There appear to be unauthorized access events during my documented absences from the office." Maximilian leaned forward. "Benedict, the access logs show all transactions originated from your computer terminal using your personal authentication codes. There's no evidence of unauthorized access." "That's impossible. I've never initiated those transfers." Isadora opened a thick folder. "The case management system maintains detailed audit trails. Every transaction includes timestamp data, IP address verification, and biometric confirmation. According to these records, you personally authorized every questionable transfer." The insurance attorneys exchanged glances. One of them spoke. "Mr. Aldrich, we need to understand your relationship with the affected clients. Have any of them expressed concerns about fund availability or questioned billing practices?" My mind raced through recent client communications. No complaints. No questions about missing funds. If clients weren't reporting problems, where had the $47,000 gone? "Which clients are affected?" I asked. Maximilian consulted his notes. "Henderson Industries, Coastal Manufacturing, and Trinity Holdings. All current Chapter 11 cases, under your supervision." I knew those accounts intimately. Henderson's case alone involved over $2 million in escrow funds. If someone had stolen $47,000 from just 3 clients, they had been extremely careful to avoid detection. "I want to see the detailed transaction records," I said. Isadora slid a printed report across the table. "Everything's documented here. Dates, amounts, destination accounts." The funds were transferred to a series of shell companies registered in Delaware. I scanned the report quickly. The destination account numbers meant nothing to me, but the timing pattern was unmistakable. Every transfer occurred during my scheduled absences, exactly as I had suspected. "Someone else has access to my authentication codes," I said. "This is identity theft, not embezzlement." The insurance attorney made notes. "Who else knows your access credentials?" I looked directly at Maximilian. "Only one person has ever requested temporary access to my codes." The room fell silent. Maximilian's expression didn't change, but his hands stopped moving. For the first time since I had known him, he looked genuinely surprised. "Benedict, you're suggesting I stole from your clients?" "I'm stating facts. You requested my codes 6 weeks ago for an emergency transfer. The unauthorized transactions began immediately afterward." Isadora intervened. "Maximilian, do you have documentation of this code-sharing arrangement?" "Of course." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through messages. "Benedict sent me temporary access credentials on March 15th for the Henderson emergency transfer. I used them once and immediately reported the access termination to IT security." He showed his phone screen to the insurance attorneys. The message thread appeared legitimate. My encrypted message with temporary codes, his confirmation of successful transfer, and a follow-up email to IT security requesting access revocation. But something felt wrong about the timestamps. "May I see that message thread?" I asked. Maximilian hesitated for a fraction of a second before handing over his phone. The messages looked authentic, but the metadata showed creation dates that didn't match my memory of events. "These messages are backdated," I said. "The Henderson emergency transfer happened on March 22nd, not the 15th. The insurance attorneys leaned forward. One of them spoke. "Mr. Oakmont, can you explain the discrepancy in dates?" Maximilian's composure finally cracked. His face flushed slightly, and he reached for his phone. There must be some confusion about the timeline. "Let me check my calendar." But I was already remembering other details. The weekend of my daughter's graduation had been March 22nd. The Henderson emergency transfer had required immediate action because opposing counsel was threatening to freeze all escrow accounts Monday morning. Maximilian had created false documentation to cover his tracks. The real emergency transfer had given him legitimate access to my codes, but he had used that access for weeks afterward, systematically stealing from multiple client accounts. The shell companies in Delaware, I said to the insurance attorneys. "I want to see the registration documents." Isadora consulted another folder. The companies were registered through a corporate services firm. The beneficial ownership information is sealed. But someone had to provide identification to open the destination bank accounts. One of the insurance attorneys nodded. "We're working with federal investigators to trace the funds. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been notified." Maximilian stood abruptly. "I think we should postpone this discussion until everyone has legal representation." "Sit down, Maximilian," Isadora said firmly. "We're not finished." The managing partner opened a final folder. Our IT security team conducted a comprehensive audit of all system access logs. They found evidence of credential sharing between multiple user accounts. "Maximilian, your access patterns show unusual activity during Benedict's documented absences." The evidence was overwhelming. Maximilian had used my codes to steal $47,000 from 3 different client trust accounts. He had created false documentation to cover the initial code-sharing arrangement, and he had been careful to time his thefts during my scheduled absences to avoid detection. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. Isadora consulted her notes. "The earliest suspicious transaction dates back 8 weeks, but the pattern suggests this might not be Maximilian's first offense." The room felt smaller suddenly. The man who had saved my career and earned my complete trust had been systematically stealing from my clients for months. The favor he had done me, covering up my filing error, had been calculated to create exactly this kind of leverage. Maximilian finally spoke. "I want to call my attorney." "That's your right," Isadora said. "But first, I need to know the current location of all stolen funds." Maximilian refused to answer any more questions without his attorney present. The meeting ended with him escorted from the building by security. I watched from my office window as he walked to his car, shoulders straight, briefcase in hand. Even caught red-handed, he maintained his composure. The next 72 hours moved like a legal avalanche. The Banking and Investment Fraud Committee opened a formal investigation. Economic Risk Response investigator Ian Parker arrived Tuesday morning with a team of forensic accountants. They set up in the large conference room, spreading documents across every available surface. "Mr. Aldrich," Parker said during our first interview, "walk me through your typical trust account management procedures." I explained the monthly reconciliations, the client notification protocols, the dual signature requirements for large withdrawals. Parker took detailed notes, occasionally asking for clarification about specific software features or security protocols. "When did you first notice the discrepancies?" "Last Friday." The automated alert showed unusual activity patterns. "I initially thought it was a system error." Parker nodded. "Our preliminary analysis suggests the defendant exploited a vulnerability in your firm's credential sharing policy. He used your access codes to authorize transactions during your documented absences." The investigation moved quickly. Parker's team traced the stolen funds through 3 shell companies to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The money had been converted to cryptocurrency, then back to traditional currency, creating a complex digital trail designed to obscure its origins. Wednesday afternoon brought the first client lawsuit. Margaret Chen, whose divorce settlement funds had been partially stolen, filed a malpractice claim against both Maximilian and the firm. Her attorney demanded immediate restitution plus punitive damages. "We're looking at potential liability in the mid-6 figures," our malpractice insurance carrier warned during an emergency conference call. "The other affected clients will likely follow suit within days." They did. By Friday, we faced 3 separate lawsuits totaling $800,000 in claimed damages. The local legal newspaper ran a front-page story about the trust account theft, though they kept the details vague, pending the ongoing investigation. The firm's emergency partners meeting convened Saturday morning. Isadora presented the full scope of our exposure: potential criminal charges against Maximilian, civil liability for the stolen funds, possible bar discipline for inadequate supervision, and reputational damage that could affect our client base for years. "We need to consider dissolution," one of the senior partners said. "The insurance coverage won't handle this level of exposure." Dissolution would leave the clients with no recourse, I argued. We have an obligation to make them whole, Isadora agreed. Benedict's right. We liquidate non-essential assets, establish a restitution fund, and fight the malpractice claims aggressively. Maximilian acted outside his authority. We can demonstrate that our policies were adequate. The bar complaint arrived the following Tuesday. The State Bar's disciplinary committee opened formal proceedings against both Maximilian and me. My involvement was limited to inadequate supervision, but the potential sanctions ranged from public reprimand to temporary suspension. The hearing is scheduled for next month, my disciplinary attorney explained. We'll argue that you followed all required procedures. Maximilian's credential access was authorized for legitimate business purposes. You couldn't have reasonably anticipated this level of betrayal. Meanwhile, Parker's investigation uncovered additional evidence. Maximilian had been planning this theft for months, carefully studying our security protocols and identifying vulnerabilities. He had researched offshore banking procedures and cryptocurrency exchanges. The favor he had done me, covering up my filing error, was part of a calculated strategy to gain my complete trust. He needed someone with trust account access who would be grateful enough to share credentials, Parker explained during his final briefing. Your filing mistake provided the perfect opportunity to create that relationship. The criminal charges came down 3 weeks later. The district attorney filed felony theft charges against Maximilian, along with money laundering and computer fraud counts. The total exposure carried a potential sentence of 15 years in federal prison. Maximilian's attorney negotiated a plea agreement. In exchange for cooperation in recovering the stolen funds and testimony about his methods, the prosecution agreed to recommend a reduced sentence of 4 years. The plea hearing was scheduled for the following month. I attended the hearing with Isadora and our insurance attorneys. Maximilian stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled. The man who had once commanded respect in every courtroom now looked diminished and tired. Mr. Oakmont, the judge said, do you understand the charges against you? Yes, Your Honor. And do you wish to enter a plea of guilty to all counts? Yes, Your Honor. The judge accepted the plea and ordered immediate restitution to the affected clients. Maximilian's assets, his house, his investment accounts, his luxury car, would be liquidated to fund the payments. The remaining balance would be covered by our firm's insurance and the emergency restitution fund we had established. After the hearing, I found myself in the courthouse hallway with Parker. Will the clients be made whole? I asked. Eventually. The recovery process will take several months, but we've identified most of the stolen funds. Your firm's cooperation has been exemplary. The bar hearing followed 2 weeks later. I testified about our security procedures, the credential sharing policy, and my relationship with Maximilian. The disciplinary panel asked pointed questions about my oversight responsibilities and whether I should have detected the theft earlier. Mr. Aldrich, the panel chair said, do you believe your supervision of Mr. Oakmont was adequate? I believed it was at the time. In retrospect, I should have been more suspicious of his unusual interest in my trust account procedures. But he was a respected colleague who had earned my complete trust. The panel deliberated for 6 hours. They returned with a finding of inadequate supervision but declined to impose sanctions beyond a formal reprimand. The written decision noted that Maximilian's deception was sophisticated and that my cooperation with the investigation demonstrated good faith. 3 months after the theft was discovered, all affected clients had been fully compensated. The criminal case was closed, with Maximilian beginning his 4-year sentence. The civil lawsuits were settled through our insurance coverage. The firm survived, though our reputation required careful rebuilding. I established new protocols for trust account management, mandatory dual authorization for all transactions, monthly third-party audits, and restricted credential sharing. The changes were expensive, but necessary to prevent future incidents. The experience taught me that professional betrayal often comes from those closest to us. Maximilian had studied my weaknesses, identified my vulnerabilities, and exploited my gratitude to gain access to client funds. His calculated manipulation had been nearly perfect, But the legal system had worked. The investigation was thorough, the prosecution was aggressive, and the victims were compensated. Justice, though delayed, had been served completely.